Good morning, everyone. Excited for you all to be here. Appreciate you coming out this morning. Last day of the conference, exciting week in Cannes, very, very hot. I'm very excited today to talk to you about where we see the industry headed and share a journey with you of where we've been throughout the last 8 years in this space. I can't start at the beginning because we don't have enough time, but I'll start nearly at the beginning. When my co-founder and my founding team and I were up in the mountains in California in Tahoe, doing our, I guess, technically one of our first team retreats. At a time where DeFi was starting to come alive. This was after we lived through the ICO era, lived through the era where we call 2018 and 19, where we were in a dark room, lights were off, there was no exit. We didn't know where we were going, neither did the industry, but luckily DeFi came alive. And we started to plug into some really interesting technology. This is when Uniswap started to come online, and we started to see some new interesting contracts that didn't just swap tokens for other tokens, but actually had kind of some yield strategies, liquidity pools, factory contracts. And one of the bigger questions we asked once we saw these things come online was how do you kind of focus on speed as a trader? How do you get ahead slightly as an edge? We've obviously seen a lot of that prior to the crypto space and the high-frequency trading space and other traditional markets. But when you're looking at on-chain activity, can you create more intelligent systems? And so one of the first things we did in DeFi was to build out this little bot on Telegram, very simple, humble bot called Unispotter. One of the first bots for Uniswap at the time. And we just published a little blog post saying, hey, we're listening to real-time activity on chain. We can move pair pool liquidity and layer in pricing data for day traders to get a little bit of alpha, get a little bit of edge on the market. We published this in a simple blog post, and we had over 7,000 people sign up for this bot in the first 10 days. Whoa, okay, people want this. People don't want to work for their data. And traditionally before this, you were cross-referencing on-chain data with block explorers, looking at some price data through some pretty simple APIs or other data sources at the time, and you could not do that under a second. We could easily do that in real time. So we saw the value, and at this phase, we really focused on speed. What was fun after this era of the early beginning start of Uniswap was we entered the really fun phase we all know and love, that is DeFi summer. If any of you have seen Severance, great show, recommend, the guy dancing, like that's DeFi summer. That's the vibe that everyone felt, and when we look back, we feel today. And when we entered this era, it just wasn't Uniswap anymore. We had other forks of Uniswap. We had new exchanges coming online. We had lending protocols and yield-bearing strategies that were all starting to take shape. And when we thought about that era, it wasn't just about speed, but it was more about automation. And we evolved as well internally, and we wanted to help more people automate and build bots like Unispotter themselves and provide that level of tooling. And so we built out a new automation system called Dispatch. And it was a more smarter, intelligent system that could react in real time to on-chain activity. And this was a really interesting product. And what was interesting throughout this time, DeFi summer came, COVID came, and then NFTs came. Who knew that sequence was going to play out, but it did. And what was interesting, the way we structured this product and the way we thought about the industry, we knew DeFi was one of many verticals to come in crypto. We didn't know what the next one was, but we wanted to build a system that was intelligent enough and reactive enough that you could drop in any smart contract, listen to smart contract events and functions, regardless of the standard. Obviously we're looking at 20 tokens, factory contracts. Now we're looking at ERC 721s and 1155s. But our system was agnostic in that regard. And so we started helping out teams beyond DeFi now. We had teams looking at, they were launching games and doing in-game minting of tokens. We saw some early, really interesting use cases, I like to say like early RWA use cases, not of massive assets, but of authenticity for brands. We were working with a group that was working with F1 teams and Insomniac Games on Spider-Man drops for specific authentic apparel. Which was all very interesting. And as this era came and all the excitement came and a lot of dollars rushed into this space, I always like to think that era was longer than it was, but it was quickly cut off. And I'm not going to spend too much time and kill the mood of the room. But we all knew what happened here. And in reality, for us, we kept building. We've lived through, I think the 18 and 19 era was probably the worst time. This wasn't great. I had some bunch of experience I'm happy to share, outside of this room. But as we continued down this path and the market came down, new things were happening behind the scenes, and what we like to call the great unbundling. So obviously, there's a crash, there's a moment, and then we moved into an era where it wasn't just about the top tier chains, but it was about roll-ups. It was about L1s, L2s, L3s, L4s, totally new technology, 1 million transactions per second, all exciting stuff. But from an infrastructure standpoint, we had to kind of rethink how we handled it. And so for us, it felt like that Oprah moment, for those that know Oprah, where everyone, reach under your seat, you get a blockchain. And it was exciting, it was interesting, but we started, instead of us getting protocols reaching out that were on Ethereum or Polygon or Avalanche, we had net new blockchains reaching out to us saying, hey, can you index our infrastructure? Can you hook up dispatch to it? And while we would love to do that, the realities of indexing OP stacks that are doing a terabyte of data per month is that's expensive. That's not just traditional archival storage. These people are starting to require NVMe GP3 style storage in AWS, which is really expensive. As you start looking at the node providers, they have to offset that cost as well, and you have this meter that's continuing to rack up. So as we dug into this area, our infrastructure cost went up to the right, and that's not the up and to the right you want, typically. And so we had to figure something out, and we had to start thinking more holistically. And what we see from the great unbundling to the great funneling. And quick side story. Before we got into crypto, my co-founder and I have been working together for 13 years, and we started and scaled another company in the higher education space. As we sold that company and transitioned into crypto, this was at the time Microsoft Azure was getting pretty competitive with moving into the cloud space. They give us just under $500,000 of credits. We were really excited. We were just starting off in this new project. We started running some Ethereum nodes, and we were immediately sent to cease and desist. Okay, what's going on? They said, hey, you can't mine cryptocurrencies using our infrastructure. We were running an RPC node. They had absolutely no idea what we were doing, and that is what it is. But what was interesting at this time, as we kind of entered this next phase of growth within crypto, and all these new chains came online, I started seeing a shift. As we saw our costs go up on our traditional bills, so did the ops people and strategy people at GCP, AWS, and Azure, and they started showing up in crypto. And they were on stage with some of the top protocols announcing partnerships. So exciting, and to see these big companies partnering with these small companies. And don't get me wrong, they fill a very important void in getting people off the ground. But when I started in 17 and 18, everyone was talking about decentralization. And here we are, literally every single protocol in some capacity leaning on the most centralized infrastructure in the world. And as we started unpacking that and realizing that our bill was going way up, everyone else's bill was also going way up. And the reality of credits, while they're nice in the beginning, they run out. And when we spoke to most founders, every single person's biggest line item on their expense sheet beyond salaries was cloud spend. And so I was like, how do you actually tackle that problem? So we took a turn. We went back to kind of some old school stuff. Back in the day, little story here, my co-founder, before I started working with him a long time ago, his head of DevOps and him, they got acquired by this big pharmaceutical company where they were running a massive on-prem infrastructure. Post-acquisition, after it was all said and done, they got to retain all of that hardware. And so this was sitting in his garage for a number of years, and when I finally got around to hiring Kevin, the one standing up on your right, he said, hey, I'm managing AWS, I see this bill, it's growing, we're gonna do everything we can to cut costs, but in reality, we're gonna onboard all these chains, it's gonna continue to go up. I have this hardware in the garage collecting dust, are you interested in spinning it up? I was like, well, what would it take? He's like, well, I don't have enough power in the house to actually get this online, but I could, slim it down to one power supply, get a 50-foot extension cord, unplug my dryer, and plug in the rack. Sounded reasonable. So I ordered him a 50-foot extension cord, we plugged it in, and we had a home lab going for a few months. And the test there was do we have enough compute, even with this legacy hardware, to offset our internal cost of what at the time was nearly $250,000 to spend per year. And as we did that, we quickly realized we had more than enough capacity. And that even though that this was legacy hardware, the responsiveness of it, as we started kind of getting into these boxes and starting standing up our own infrastructure, was substantially faster than that of AWS. So we started digging in a bit more. did that in the home lab. Like, okay, let's upgrade some of the hardware. Let's move it to the enterprise data facility. Ironically, the same facility they got acquired in years prior. And we racked up the equipment about several months back and hooked up our own direct ISP drops, power supply, all the fun stuff that comes with stacking and racking hardware. And as we looked around, we said, who else is here? Like this data center is at full capacity. We're under the impression everyone's in the cloud. We see some of the biggest sports networks. We see some of the biggest streaming companies. We see a lot of infrastructure where it's like the realities of scale is that you're not typically sticking with the hyperscalers at some point, or you have a hybrid strategy. And so as we dug deeper into the data center space, one of the most interesting things we found after going down multiple rabbit holes of modular nuclear and all this stuff is that when we're talking to boutique cloud providers, when we're talking to data centers and traditional bare metal groups, they all sit on idle capacity. This is capacity that they have as additional headroom in case there's a spike, but in reality, a lot of this just sits waiting. And as we approached these groups and started talking to them, saying, hey, could we acquire some of the hardware, or would you be open to lending some of this hardware out as we become more of a channel for you to increase utilization rates, they were all on board. And so we had to figure out a way, well, if there's that much idle capacity, if there's a way for these groups that want to set their own pricing on their own compute, but we can go from 1,000 cores to 100,000 cores across our CPU, disk, and RAM stack. How do we make that in a way that's approachable, accessible, and affordable for a lot of these groups? And for us, our goal wasn't to cut costs by 10, 20%. That's not going to move the needle for folks. People aren't going to move their production workload off of AWS for that. We're moving at least 50% cost reduction across the entire enterprise stack in production. And so we started building up a pipeline of different groups that wanted to add capacity. And that was really exciting. And as we got to that point, we had to realize, how are we going to coordinate it all, and what is that next step? And that's where we get into kind of Web3's next level, we like to call it. And this is a culmination of all of the things that we've been working on for the last 8 years. So it started in DeFi, really focused on speed, and that kind of piece of meeting the market where it is. And I still think DeFi is one of the best product market fits. I think most of us can agree within crypto. I think the compute has been this rapidly growing space that we've stumbled upon out of necessity to offset our own infrastructure, but to also scale to a different level and to maintain reasonable cost and pass those cost savings along to other users. And then the biggest piece that we think is going to be the biggest unlock, not just in Web3, but across the globe, are agents in a fully autonomous agent-to-agent economy. And the only true way to do this, in our opinion, is to have a purpose-built kind of core. And so underpinning all of this is a new layer 1 EVM-compatible L1 blockchain that we've been building that is going to be the coordination layer, the settlement layer, that all of these systems can run upon, the rails that it can run upon. And it's not competing with memes, it's not competing with other use cases, it's purpose-built in a way for these systems to run. And we're super excited about it. It's called Flora. This is the first time I'm publicly talking about it today, soft launch of sorts. But we're excited to share this with the world. We're excited to start building this in public with you all. And this is something that, this is 8 years of us in this space. We've been wanting to do something big in the more public domain for a while. Obviously, we've been building SaaS products and infrastructure, but we wanted to build something that was more open and a kind of a public good. And Flora is going to be a big project for us internally, and something that we're excited for many people to follow along as we continue this journey. So yeah, we're ready for, call it AI summer or DeFi AI summer. I don't know how you even pronounce the DeFi in different terms, but this is us today. We're here. This is us tonight, maybe, or yesterday or the day before. But within the years to come, that beach will be beyond full, and we're going to outgrow Con. So how are we going to do that? We believe Flora is going to be a big part of that, and we're excited for you all to follow the journey. If you want to follow along, feel free. You'll be like literally the 15th or 20th person on our Twitter if you want to follow us over there. So it's early days, and we're excited to announce it here at the community conference. One of the big things for us is trust and kind of building in the open and building out a community, something I've always loved to do across my last startup and this one too. So we're excited to unveil it today. So thank you all for your time. Happy to answer any questions. We got a few minutes.
What do you think has been, I guess, the biggest reason that AI isn't yet a huge part of Web3?
Yeah, good question. So I think one thing with AI right now, obviously AI's been around for a while in different form factors, but in terms of the big unlock in the last 18 or so months has been like this new chat interface or prompting interface. I think as we think about Web3, the use cases aren't just going to, like, prompting's not the end game for crypto or for AI. And the use cases for crypto, I think it's going to be more automated agents that are running behind the scenes doing different type of strategies across DeFi. We also have some interesting like DevOps style multi-agent workflows that are going to be running against the compute stack that are already helping us increase like 4 times capacity. I think the issue when you think about that level of integration across a multi-step agent workflow is that some people are doing that today, but not the majority. And I think that interface needs to change. So it's not just about custom prompts and slight efficiencies. It's about full-blown automation across that stack. And we believe the marketplace we're starting to build in Flora will be templatized orchestration tools like that you can click and deploy. So like no code, low ops style pipelines that is accessible to more people for more powerful style agents. Yeah.
2 questions. Where are you guys based? And also, specifically with like the use case for around DeFi, how do you guys intend to launch?
Sure. We're based all over the U.S. right now in terms of the core team. And then in terms of DeFi, so we're talking to a lot of existing DeFi protocols. We're not trying to necessarily reinvent that wheel. We just want native DeFi rails there. Talking to some of the biggest stablecoin groups as well. So we want the ability for agents to transact with one another seamlessly. We don't want to force bridging across all these agents. I think as you start thinking about real use cases and within the crypto space, the set of privacy, trust, and concern there can become potentially an issue. So having it all live in under the hood here with, again, the other reason we went EVM compatible, all the top DeFi protocols are already there. And so being able to onboard them is going to be quite seamless. The other piece that we're considering and we're still exploring is opening up the marketplace to other top-tier blockchains. So we're not under the impression that we force people to use Flora. Flora is that settlement layer ultimately underneath the hood, but we want to have that marketplace live across other ecosystems so people can use other DeFi protocols, connect agents to other workflows and all that stuff. But behind the scenes, Flora will settle back to the core chain.
So is the idea that the agents live on the Flora network?
Yep.
And then would you guys have the users, or would the users come in through other places?
Yeah, users can come through different places in terms of the different chains, but ultimately the agents would live within smart contracts initially on Flora that can also be compatible across other chains.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.